Yo, what is up, guys? Undead Nerd here, and today we are going to be going over an interview Kevin Feige did with Deadline. I'm going to read all of his quotes, and I am going to give my thoughts on each possible future. And you've read the title. That is going to be the big news for today. So let's start off with Fantastic Four. Quote, "It's no homework required. Go see the movie. It's literally not connected to anything that was made before," says Feige. "It kicks off Phase 6. Now, I actually like that they made Fantastic Four First Steps take place in an alternate reality, because you don't have to cram the Fantastic Four into the already clusterfucked Marvel Cinematic Universe. And plus, I think the Fantastic Four have a big world of their own, similar to the X-Men, similar to the Avengers, which is what the Infinity Saga adapted. And I'll give my thoughts on my disappointment with Female Silver Surfer when I do the movie review stream. I'm seeing that on Thursday as of the time I'm recording this. So next up is Blade. So we already know about Blade, alright? It's been 6 years since it was announced Mahershala Ali was going to be playing the character for a movie, and the movie still hasn't happened. And so Kevin Feige says, quote, "We didn't want to put a leather outfit on Ali, who's playing Blade, and have him start killing vampires. You could start to have a good script and make it a great script through production, but we didn't feel confident and we could do that on Blade," he continues. "We didn't want to do that to Mahershala and didn't want to do that on us." And yeah, that's not a bad motive, but at the same time, you know, we had the leak that the Blade reboot was going to be led by a bunch of women, and like the character we actually want to see was going to be in the forefront. So you actually, spent a long time making this movie, and Mahershala Ali wasn't having it because, you know, you tried pushing the message a lot, and now you decided, instead of making it set in the 20s, which was the original plan, and I kind of wish they still went with that, because you could have made it a tribute to, like, Bela Lugosi or Nosferatu, you know, something like that. But apparently, all the sets from the movie were used for Sinners, which is a really good movie in my opinion. Movie of this year. And yeah, I hope you don't screw it up this time. You just make it Blade killing vampires and shit. So now on to the switch from Kang as the big bad to Doctor Doom. Feige says, even before what had happened to the actor, Jonathan Majors, I find it strange that he doesn't name Jonathan Majors by name, we had started to realize that Kang wasn't Thanos. There was only one character that could be that because he was that in the comics for decades and decades. And because of the Fox acquisition, we finally had it, and that's Doctor Doom. Now, full disclosure, I don't believe in the bullshit that you were like, oh, even before his accident, he wasn't working, we were changing plans. No, you had an entire Avengers movie based on him planned. You had the Council of Kangs post-credit scene planned, and you had Kang planned to be the villain of Shang-Chi 2, from what I heard from leaks, and he was supposed to be in X-Men 97 before Beau DeMayo got fired, and so on and so forth. So yeah, well, I do believe you did have plans to include Doctor Doom. I don't believe for a second that you wanted to replace Kang entirely, alright? So then Kevin Feige talks about Spider-Man Brand New Day, which is of course going to include Punisher, even though they're not going to have all these movies require homework anymore. And he says, where we have great actors playing great characters, I think it would be fun to see them in multiple places. Which is true. And now I'm glad this is happening, because I love Jon Bernthal as the Punisher. Punisher Season 2 sucked, by the way. And, you know, in the marketing, you can reference, like, Spidey's first crossover with the Hulk, and the first appearance of the Punisher, which was a Spider-Man comic. And yeah, you know, as long as you make a fun movie, I think people will go out to see it. And it's Spider-Man. I think that character is guaranteed to be a billion-dollar success, regardless. Which is why you're never getting him back from Sony, Feige. Now on to Crisscross, as the article calls it. So they basically say that the Marvels was a wake-up call not to have so much homework for the MCU, and that I disagree with. I don't think that's the main reason why the Marvels bombed. It bombed because there was already a hatred towards this version of the Captain Marvel character. There was already hatred towards Brie Larson, and of course, Miss Marvel. I don't think Miss Marvel is the success the narratives from the media keep saying she is. All right, everything she's been in has failed. So I think it was mostly just the uninterest of the characters and the backlash before this movie was even conceived in the womb that caused it to bomb. But of course, Kevin Feige still mentions that Thunderbolts is a great movie, which I kind of agree. It's okay, you know, it's all right. I like that Feige also compares Marvel and DC to Coke versus Pepsi. And yeah, I like that even though they're rivals now, they still keep in touch with each other. You know, Feige said Gunn told him he wouldn't exist without you guys, which is true, 100% true. Next up, the high school GSA that took the name of Hercules, Ghost Rider, Iceman, Black Widow, and Angels team. I actually own the first issue up there. So, I'll show it later. So, so Kevin Feige says, possibly, he uses the language so ambiguously when it comes to the Young Avengers or the Champions. It's like, you know, he wants to say they're not doing it, but maybe they'll do it, you know, because Marvel has put themselves in a progressive bubble, all right? They can't cut characters that were specifically made to pander to the progressive crowd, which is why I call the new Champions High School GSA with the Marvel logo on it. I'm definitely going to make that a joke in a future video. And for Miss Marvel, now, I don't like the Miss Marvel character, but I do like Iman Vellani. Alright, Iman Vellani is clearly a fan. And what I would suggest doing, maybe giving her a filmmaker role? Like a writing role? For a character? Whatever she wants? I don't know. She hasn't proven herself yet. Anyway, so Kevin Feige says Iman Vellani is one of the greatest castings Marvel has ever done. Nope. And he also says, quote, I can't wait to see her reappear somewhere. So he says somewhere. It's like, yeah, somewhere down the line. Because he can't automatically say they're cutting her ass out. But yeah, you know, even if they are, if there's a possibility, you know, I want them to find a way to keep Iman some way. Because like I said earlier while talking about the Marvels, the character is not successful. Sorry, but that's the case. Fucking comics keep getting rebooted. Fun fact, I was originally planning on skipping this next part I'm about to bring up, and that is the post-credit scenes being left uncontinued, like Hercules and Thor: Love and Thunder, a character I like in the comics, and that gay boy at the end of Eternals. I'm trying to think of a nickname for him. Man, look, I can pretend it's 2012. And so Kevin Feige said it could be just like Tim Blake Nelson as the leader, because it took 17 years for him to return. Now, with Tim Blake Nelson as the leader, I need to say this, Kevin Feige. You did not bring him back for a long time because of a rights issue. You could not do The Incredible Hulk 2, so you couldn't have him as the villain of the Hulk 2, because you couldn't do a Hulk movie without Universal distributing it. Like here, you're just being lazy. You're just being plain lazy. Now we have a subject that all of you are gonna roll your eyes at. It's Kevin Feige addressing the complaints of woke. And I think this is the first time he ever addressed this. And look, folks, I know I've been talking about it a lot on this channel, but I don't want to be known as a political commentator, so I'm always on the nose to address this issue or not. That's why Kevin Feige is wearing the fucking hat in the thumbnail, if you saw already. But I'm doing this because it's a big thing that's affecting the media I love. Like, if a character is being unnecessarily changed, or if an agenda is being pushed into something I like, you know, I'm gonna call it out because I think it's wrong. And if there's defenders of that subject, you know, I'm gonna call them retards, and because that's who I am. So Kevin Feige said, quote, I said this before woke and DEI became a thing, and I'm saying it again. Marvel is the world outside your window. It's not Gotham City. It's not Metropolis. This is New York and LA. Yes, there's also Wakanda and Asgard, but it is all made up of the people who make up our world. Now, I could see this argument that Kevin Feige is coming up with. However, so I assume he's talking about the swaps. Alright, you are unnecessarily swapping characters. Alright, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have been down for an Asian Namor because the character looks Asian in the comics. I'm pretty sure everyone would be down for like a non-white Norrin Rad or a non-white Ben Grimm because both those characters are gonna be a different, thing, pun intended, the rest of their lives. Like, you, on the other hand, are swapping everyone in the book. Alright? And that's the thing. You're saying LA and New York. You're not going the rest of the United States. You're not saying the timeline when these characters were made, where communities were mostly white. And again, you're not talking about characters where their race matters. Alright? It suddenly doesn't matter if the character is white, but it does automatically matter if the character is not white. If you wanted to base this saga of the MCU off of diversity, Kevin Feige, you would go with so many other characters in the comics. Alright, you wouldn't go with more recent characters, you wouldn't go with mantle swaps, you wouldn't go with race swaps of characters who weren't on film yet, and so on and so forth. Alright. For example, Dr. Voodoo's black. He was created to be black, and it makes sense for him to be black, because he's voodoo. Alright, Night Thrasher's black. He's a rich dude who gets kidnapped by Vietnamese terrorists. And then, he becomes a black superhero. If the race of the character doesn't matter so much, why are you always swapping? And Eternals, which I like to call Race and Gender Swap the movie. Phastos has always been black, and Kingo was Asian in the comics. Like, you could put those characters in the first movie as, like, diversity, along with female characters like Thena and Cersei. I don't mind an Asian Cersei. I've read the comics, so that's why I say that. But instead, you decide to change people. Now, the woke in DEI is not just what we mean by changing. Alright, the wokeness is some of the commentaries you put in. She-Hulk, for example. The world is out to get me because I'm a woman and shit. Or Falcon the Winter Soldier, which is oppression porn the show. Like, the BLM riots weren't even a year old when those cops showed up in one episode. And not to mention, Cassie Lang was an obnoxious activist teen character. You are constantly bashing your old characters, like Riri did in Ironheart. Alright. He contributed to the field, so I won't roast Tony Stark. You little bitch, he saved half of you. He saved half the universe, probably brought back some of your closest friends and family. And he defeated the greatest villain of the 2010s decade. Alright, bigger than Gleam and Darkon. But yeah, so it's not only the swaps we're talking about, Feige, it's also the commentaries. You need your commentaries to be less ideologically driven by an activist on Twitter or Tumblr or something like that, and more something everyone can get behind. Everyone can get behind that racism is bad, which is why the X-Men are so popular. But you can't go Black Lives Matter or mutants deserve reparations or something like that. Alright, you can't do that bullshit. So that's what we mean by woke. And as for the swaps, alright, identity is equally as important to, let's just say for the sake of simple wording, conservatives as much as liberals. Like, although I don't have too much of a problem with it, I do agree that if Boris Karloff's The Mummy were made today, alright, Imhotep and Anaxinamen would have been played by Muslims, alright? And I'd be fine with that. And, so yeah, people like characters like Silver Surfer, the way he is. Again, I'll get into some more Silver Surfer talk when I see the movie. People like Namor, the way he is. And let's just say for the sake of it, because I like the original comics, I know a lot of people in the comic community don't, but I like Jack Kirby's Eternals. For the sake of it, people like the Eternals the way they are. You are just swapping them. You're making them unrecognizable. You're making them recognizable in name and maybe power only. Alright, people did not care about the race. And you're changing it when the character is supposed to be white. Alright, it's similar to how people say Native Americans are supposed to be red. Egyptians were depicted as white for a long time. And like Asians in American media, they were always done when Boris Karloff would just close his eyes halfway. I'm sorry, I couldn't help but laugh. So you're changing characters that don't need to be changed. Alright? And so we're gonna point it out. Heck, I pointed out the race swap of Jade in Mortal Kombat Annihilation from almost 30 fucking years ago. Jade should not be Asian, she should be black. Alright, she's the token black girl in an Asian society. That's the entire point of Jade. Alright? I don't want to see Asian Jade. Fuck that shit. And, I don't think they mentioned Raiden's race in the original game. But, I mean, I think no one would mind if Raiden was Asian. You know? Because he's that kind of character. So, yeah. Now, maybe if I was not white, like I am, maybe I would have a stronger view of this subject. But, you know, a lot of non-white comic fans I talk to, they say they don't like swaps either. Of course, there are some who do, and good on them. You know, that's what you believe. Alright. So yeah, and also I need to mention that Grace Randolph pointed out that most people who saw Deadpool and Wolverine were Hispanics. So that kind of breaks the narrative that people need to see themselves in a movie to succeed. I'm not saying you can't have a Hispanic superhero. I would love to see one. But you can't swap. Just to say, hey, look, little Mexican, we know you're having trouble getting across the border. Go see the superhero movie. That's a commentary on how illegal should stay and shit. Both of that is what I mean by woke. Alright. So, Kevin Feige has confirmed that Drake Schreier, the director of Thunderbolts, will direct the new X-Men movie. Now, I'm a little bit down for this, a little bit not. Again, I found Thunderbolts okay. You know, I liked it more than I hated it, you know? And I'm a little bit more optimistic about smaller directors working on big Marvel movies because I think Matt Shakman, although I haven't seen Fantastic Four yet, I'll see it on Thursday at the time of recording this, is doing a good job when it comes to the camera work and, like, the sets for, X-Men. And, I don't know how Jake Schreier is gonna do it, but he definitely did try, you know, with a movie like Thunderbolts. So, I don't think he's the choice, but he is a choice. Alright? And this is what excites me personally. Kevin Feige says X-Men Reboot will be about a very youth-oriented, focused, and cast movie. You know what that means. Original 5 X-Men! Let's go! Woo! Cyclops, Jean Grey, Not Gay Iceman, Angel, Beast. That is what, because that's the incarnation of the X-Men where it's predominantly youthful. Like, the original comics do describe them as teenagers. So, yeah, I'm down for that. You know, it's your excuse to have these characters, you know, grow over time and carry the franchise. And, yeah. And honestly, like, if you're gonna do an all-white X-Men, you know, I'm down if you do something similar to what you did with Pedro as Reed. Like, a white passing casting, that's a rumor. That's a rumor at that point. They casted him because he looks white, but he still, like, appeases the diversity freaks up at Disney. You know, I'm down if you do that with Angel or Beast, maybe. But, Iceman, please, do not make Iceman gay, alright? But he was gay in the comics! Recent comics, alright? He is... Not necessarily as much as Johnny Storm, but he's always been a ladies' man. And the fucking comics turned him into a twink, alright? Don't make him a twink, alright? Got that? Okay. That would fix an original 5 X-Men movie for me. Okay. Moving on. Now, finally, what I think is the biggest news today, Iron Man and Captain America are being recast, and Kevin Feige describes it as similar to James Bond, which makes a lot of sense, alright? And he says, quote, reboot is a scary word, and it means so much to a lot of different people. So let's say reset or different timeline. So a reboot. I'm sorry, reboot's not that scary of a word to me, alright? It's not as scary as End of the World. Okay, anyway, so, I'm actually pretty excited for this. I mean, I felt like Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man and Chris Evans' Captain America, like their end in Endgame, no pun intended, alright, was a perfect way to send off these characters. And I'm all down for a reboot. And hey, when you do this reboot, alright, I'm speaking as a comic fan myself. Alright, I have an entire series called Comic Obscurity. Alright, thanks for all the views on that short about Clint Barton as Giant Man and how I don't like it. Alright, thank you all so much for watching that. Alright, both characters have as big of a rogues gallery and as many stories as, say, Spider-Man, the X-Men, and even the Fantastic Four. Iron Man, while admittedly still isn't my all-time favorite character, he does have a badass rogues gallery, like the Mandarin. Alright, we could finally get a comic-accurate Mandarin, like he's got the green cloak and the purple mask and the rings. Alright, you can also finally adapt Unicorn and Cobalt Man. Maybe you can give us a male, fully evil ghost, you know, stuff like that. Who else? Maybe you could bring back Whiplash again? Who knows? You could finally adapt Demon in a Bottle or something like that. And Captain America, who I'm more of a fan of. Alright, I just love the concept of Cap. Alright. You know, you could do stories like The Mad Bomb or The Arena of Death, or you could finally have Falcon in a comic-accurate suit, and, like, he has a connection between a real Red Wing, not a fucking robot this time, and, like, you can make an entire movie about how he's connected to the Cosmic Cube, or in the MCU it's called the Tesseract. Like, you can have Red Skull using the Tesseract a lot more. Alright, you can have so many of his other villains, like, the Serpent Society. Alright, we were almost gonna get the Serpent Society twice, folks. Like, fucking twice. And you could even have, I forgot his name, but that ginger with the cigar that makes him hallucinate or something like that. Like, you could do so much with Captain America, like Steve Rogers as a character. You can even adapt Cap's Kooky Quartet if you're gonna reboot the MCU. That includes Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and yours truly. So yeah, folks, I think this is exciting news. Hopefully they go back to listening to the comics like they did in the early days of the MCU. But not everything should be 100% accurate. I know, shut the fuck up. Anyway, but still, like, at least have stories that stick to the spirit of the comic of, like, you know, the pre-21st century, just like the MCU did. And also, when it comes to recasting people, can you recast the Hulk? Because I can't stand Mark Ruffalo as a person.